Hello, Kiss Army, Kiss fans everywhere. The beauty of YouTube is the fact you can go back and revisit old videos and respond to other videos and whatever. And in this case, a few videos ago I mentioned the fact that I'm not a fan of, I really have no use for the music of Kiss. It's not one of my top bands, certainly. But I'll describe to you my experience with Kiss, how I form my opinion of them and that kind of thing. And to start with Kiss, I guess my first experience with Kiss was 1974 when they started releasing their first albums. And I mean, I was a teenager and I just started working in a record store, which is a very cool thing when you're young and stuff. And the Kiss albums were just starting to be released. And by that time, by 1974, I'd already been through Hendrix and the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and the Yardbirds, and I was a big prog fan at the time. Renaissance and Yes and early Genesis, Jethro Tull, all those great early bands. And around that time also, 1973, 74, was Band on the Run, great McCartney album. The first Queen album had come out. And Aerosmith, first Aerosmith album, and Get Your Wings came out in 1974. They were albums that I was really into. So when Kiss came out, it was like some kind of frickin' joke. I mean, these guys were playing the most basic rock, and they had their makeup on. You couldn't tell who they really were. It was like they were trying to hide who they really were. It was like some kind of frickin' joke. And so, my musical taste had already been formed by that time. From the first album, I did like the song Strutter. I thought it was a pretty decent song, but Kiss were putting out albums. I think they put out 3 albums in the first year, kind of thing. It was like they were just churning them out, and they weren't playing them on the radio. I mean, they just didn't seem that good musically. But the kids started buying their records, and they'd come into the store. It wasn't the older kids. It wasn't like the 17, 18, 19-year-olds. It was the 14-year-olds that were buying the Kiss albums. And Kiss were putting all kinds of inserts and things like that into the jackets and the sleeves, and they formed the Kiss Army. And it was really aimed at the very young crowd. These 14-year-olds were kind of obnoxious in the stores. They'd come in and they'd go down to the Kiss section, and they'd be trying to steal the Kiss albums all the time. And not only were they trying to steal the Kiss albums, you'd go to the Kiss section, you'd find they'd slit the sleeves open and stolen all the paraphernalia out of them and stuff like that. It was just a complete pain in the butt. Stocking Kiss albums in the stores, it brought the customers in, but they were the worst kind of customers, I guess. And so that kind of helped form my opinion of Kiss as well. We had to take the Kiss section and move it up to the front of the store, right by the front counter, so we could keep an eye on the things and keep an eye on those little pubescent, pimple-faced little buggers that were coming in and trying to steal all the Kiss albums all the time. But it was a bit of a challenge, though. They'd come in the store and they'd go to the Kiss section. We'd try to sell them something good, like a Zeppelin album or something like that. It was a bit of a challenge, but nope, they were members of the Kiss Army. That's all there was to it. So, later on, Kiss brought out the double live album, big seller, and Destroyer, which is here, huge seller. And then they brought out that disco song, the disco song, I Was Made for Lovin' You. And that really turned off a lot of the members of the Kiss Army. And they had a second live album, I think double live Kiss live album, and it sold really well. But their popularity began to wane in the late 70s. And I remember they put out those 4 solo albums. They all came out the same day. And they didn't sell particularly well. The Ace Frehley album sold not bad. I think Gene Simmons sold okay, but the Chris and Paul Stanley albums weren't huge sellers, and it was unfortunate, but it's reality. And then they went on into the 80s and had the Elder album and all that other stuff, and it was just the way it was. I never took them seriously, although they brought in a lot of business, I guess. But it was all about making money, of course, for the guys in Kiss, and that's the way it is. So, another little story about Kiss, and this is more of a personal story. About 20 years ago, my father was working on our family history, our family tree, and he said to me one day, have you ever heard of Shannon Tweed? And I said, oh sure, you know, she was a kind of a Playboy model, and she's Canadian, and she's the boyfriend or the girlfriend of Gene Simmons of Kiss. And my father said, well, your second cousin in Saskatoon, you know, my cousin's son is married to Shannon Tweed's older sister. And I said, you gotta be kidding. You know, that's really funny. And I mean, I hadn't seen the guy since I guess we were kids, perhaps. But I mean, that's, you know, no benefit to me kind of thing. But it's just one of those funny things in life. Like, Canada is a small country. Instead of 6 degrees of separation, you've only got 3 degrees of separation. And I think Shannon Tweed is a really cool woman. So that was, I mean, that was kind of cool. And I watched that TV show called Family Jewels, and I think, you know, Gene Simmons is hilarious. I think the whole show's pretty funny. Most of it's set up and stuff, but it's a funny show. And Gene has asked Shannon to marry him, and I hope she says yes. But anyway, that's a digression. I'm going to show you my very small Kiss collection, and here goes. I showed you this before. Kiss Destroyer. What I thought was a poster is actually a sleeve. It's the record sleeve. Then we have Kiss Animalize, which I showed you before. $11.29 when it was sold in the store. Now, these ones you haven't seen. This is a greatest hits compilation called Kiss Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, and it came out around 1988. It's one that you don't see that often. It has all the hits. This one is kind of cool. It is Kiss Originals, and it was brought out around released around 76 or 77, and it's the first 3 Kiss albums. They repackaged them into one set. They put some more paraphernalia like inside, and I'll show you that. And it was a limited edition. It was only out for a couple of years or something. It's just a moneymaker for these guys. It came with these cards, like wallet-sized cards with members of the band and Kiss Army. You know, you can carry Kiss Army around your wallet. Little factoids about the band. And this book, which is rather nice. It's a history of Kiss from the early days, 1972 to 75. And this is the first publicity photograph of the band. And they didn't have full makeup at that point, but see, Paul Stanley really only has the star around his eye. But the book is nice, and it's kind of a nice thing to have. Some good pictures in here. Here's a concert, January 2nd, 1974. It was Blue Oyster Cult, Iggy and the Stooges, Teenage Lust, and Kiss. Academy of Music in New York. I mean, this is the kind of paraphernalia you don't mind having. Now, the set itself, there were 3 albums, the first 3 albums. Instead of having the normal Casablanca label, these ones, although this is a Canadian copy, I don't know what they had in the States, but the Canadian copy had blue, yellow, and red. Now, whether it was the same in the States, I don't know. Here are pictures of the first 3 Kiss albums. Track list. Now, the other Kiss collectible that I have is Peter Criss's, I think it's his 3rd solo album. The first being the album that came out as part of that when the 4 members released albums in the same day. He had a 2nd solo album that you do see periodically. It has a very colorful cover on it. And this is a 3rd album that came out around 1982 or 83. This is a Dutch pressing, and I don't think it was ever released in North America. Although this one was imported into Canada through Polygram. Polygram had a special imports division, and that's how this one arrived in Canada. But it is a nice collectible. So I hope you enjoyed my tale of Kiss, how I've formed my opinion of Kiss. I mean, I don't have huge negative feelings toward them. As people, I'm sure they're great people. Gene Simmons is a laugh, and I really like watching that TV show. And I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, everyone.